Okay, so we'll call this meeting to order. Recording good? You guys ready?
They're so ready.
Okay. Roll call, Robert?
Here.
Kelsey?
Here.
Glenn?
Here.
Heidi? Here. Merle?
Here.
Jenny? Here. Crystal? Chair here. Dan? I'm here.
I'm here.
Okay, just checking. All right, flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. If the board has had a chance, I would accept a motion regarding the agenda considerations.
I'll move, we accept the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Hearing a first and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any public comment?
Not now,
This is your time.
for something on the agenda? Yeah, yes. Okay,
Do you want to go ahead and sign in while I'll take your public comment? Thanks. Did everybody get into their computers? You go.
So,
There you go. Good.
I have one.
Yep.
Well, I do.
It was- I have a five.
I noticed this when I was on the board meeting virtually, that some of the lenses on here are cloudy on the owl.
Okay.
When you're watching, it's like, oh, yeah. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of those.
I don't know. I don't know if they need to be cleaned or something.
Thank you so much.
I'm sure.
All right, do you want to do your public comment? I do.
Yeah.
Been a while since I've
Can
done
you
this.
say your last name again?
Schlosser?
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question about the proposed budget cuts and how that's going to be in our school district. It's my understanding that one of the proposals is that there will be a cut for the COLAs for educators, some furlough days, no paid leave buyback, and no tuition reimbursement for 2 school years. And my question is, will administrators also have those reduced COLAs and furloughs and subject to all of those cuts as well?
All right, thank you for your comment. All right, moving on to board communication. High school ASB report. Welcome back.
Thank you. How you guys doing? Hopefully good. It is kind of a long one today, but that's good. So that means that the school was busy. So we'll start off with Schools USA. They have been hard at work this past week with practices for the culinary and baking and pastry. They've had 3 total practices with 4 students each week, which is the largest group headed to the state conference in my time at North Marion, which is really cool. You'll have students compete in culinary, baking, pastry, welding sculpture, carpentry, speech, photography, pin production, and robotics, which is a great list of skills and a great list of kids going out. So that's really exciting.
And then moving on to National Honor Society, their blood drive is coming up on February 20th, and they're halfway to their scheduled goal of 100 donors. And then they're continuing homework help during advisory on Mondays.
Yep. Key Club is preparing for their Literacy Day on February 28th, which if you don't know what that is, the Key Club members go down to the primary school and spend the day reading books to the preschoolers and kindergartners. It's one of my personal favorite events, and so I'm really excited for that one. And it should be fun. It's on February 28th, which is a fun, exciting event.
And then for Awesome, It's focusing on mental health, mindset, and the community within us.
Yes, and Miss Bailey's National Art Honor Society is still currently working on the primary school's covered recess area. My understanding is that they are currently designing the glow up for it, so, and they're in the search for exterior paints, painting tools, donations, stuff like that, so they can give that whole area a nice little makeover.
And then May Day is just around the corner and talk is happening about a dinosaur theme and what it would look like for backdrops and other elements courtesy of Miss Bailey.
That is news to me, oh my gosh. Wow, that's really creative this year, goodness gracious. Miss Bailey and her yearbook team have also started the very infamous senior superlative process. And so voting's happening right now, pages are being made, and it looks like everyone is gonna be in the book at least 3 times, which will be fun for the senior year.
And then for Mecha, they have been actively involved in community services and then they assist every month by babysitting the ELL parent night at the primary school. And looking ahead for Valentine's Day, they are planning on doing a Valentine's Day fundraiser, and all proceeds from our various fundraisers will go to community events and scholarships for Mecha seniors.
Which is also a really good opportunity. Miss Moran's robotics team has 2 regional events left in the season, one in West Salem and one in North Salem, both this month. And before the state championships at Mount Hood Community College on March 8th. No one has yet qualified for their platinum division, so fingers crossed they get in this. Hopefully.
And then for FBLA is still serving students at the primary school every other week as part of the Big Brother Big Sister program. Last week, students did an outdoor scavenger hunt on a cold but sunny day and had a great time working together. FBLA went to Regional Skills Conference on January 28th at Canby High School. And they had 21 students compete in the skills competition and 17 of them placed in the top 10.
It's a good year.
And qualified
Really
for
good
State
year.
Business Leadership Conference in April. And then they are also looking forward to state conference in April, a zoo field trip with Big Brother Big Sister, and the sports business day trip to the Blazers, and a Nike campus tour for all members.
Yeah, that's everything. High school is very busy right now, but it's a fun time. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope the rest of the meeting goes well.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you guys.
Sounds like you guys are doing stellar.
This is fun. It's been fun. Thank you guys.
Thank you for coming.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
You and Emmy?
I'm Rachel Camp and I am the intermediate school representative for UNME. And I was lucky enough to come share with you today. One big thing that happened just this last week was the Great Kindness Challenge, where all the schools were kind of involved and did a lot of different things to work on encouraging kindness and different ways you can show kindness and stuff. And that went really, really well, particularly in the, well, from what I saw in the intermediate and stuff like that. So that was, of course, where I'm 5th grade, so. Got to see my kids do some cool things. STEAM also happens at the intermediate, and that's a really big deal. It's been really working well this year. They wanted me to make sure I mentioned that it's really a successful program for them to utilize that extra prep time. They get to do something extra and do STEAM with each class for 2 weeks. I think it's actually 10 days, where they get to do different things with that. Also, Literacy Day is coming up, like the girls mentioned, and we have lots of things on the docket for that. We open it up to parents to come in and volunteer, share, read to the classes, especially in the primary and elementary school, and have kids come from the high school. Sometimes we have kids from the middle school, and that's kind of all in the works right now to figure out all the different ways we can connect our schools and kids, different age groups. And then in reference to our upcoming budget cuts. I know that UNME is feeling good about the amount of communication that's been happening, the transparency, as much as we can be transparent about what things are happening, and just really forthcoming with answers as much as they can be given. Preparation for those who might, all the different possibilities of things that I know will be shared a little bit later, presented to you guys later, but just recognizing that communication has been better now than it has been in the past. So we appreciate that very much and look forward to, I don't know about looking forward to, but recognizing that our proposals accept, all those things, we are gonna be able to do that, hopefully with, calm and steady, level heads. So, yeah. That's all.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have an acknowledgement for an overnight field trip. It is Oregon field trip, I'm sorry, FBLA State Business Leader Conference, April 3rd through the 5th. We also have, district elections coming up, May 2025. There are 4 positions open for 4, terms. And those are school board vacancies, details are in the agenda. All right. Did I miss anything? You good?
Good.
Okay. Consent agenda. If you've had a moment, board, I would entertain a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll move that we accept.
No, you're good.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Do I hear a second?
One second.
Discussion?
Now, did I remember it right that there are coaching positions unfilled?
That is correct.
Okay.
We're working on it.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Business and budget.
Just be quick. I gave you the spreadsheets that I normally give you, and on the summary page, we basically are letting you know that we normally have an adjustment for the December to June ratio, which is your enrollment in ADM, and they haven't made that adjustment yet. I'm thinking they have a newer person in that role, and we probably won't get that adjustment until all their districts get in all of their information, and they're missing a few sets of that information. So hopefully it'll come to us maybe in March. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
You're up.
Well, I'd like to invite Lori Gamboa, our Director of Food Services here, and she's got a exciting update for you on, as you're probably aware, the state adopted a new model for paying for free meals. So the district has been participating in free meals for all students. And one of the questions that districts across the state wanted to know is, what's our participation rate going to be? Because of the rate that the state was covering, there was a slight chance that if participation rates didn't go up, districts could actually lose some money on this. So that was one thing that most districts were a little bit concerned about. Most districts were optimistic that rates would go up. And so Lori's here with a great presentation talking about significant increase in participation and how well we've done year to date. So I hope I didn't steal too much thunder there.
No, great. We're gonna go fast, right?
Yeah.
So there was a spreadsheet that was on there that kind of gave it gave our last year numbers and then for this year numbers. And it shows that we're serving with our enrollment down from last year, we're serving about 71% of our students eating here on campus, which is huge. It's a 25% increase from previous school year. We're serving an average of about 1,100 lunches per day. And so with our 1625, you can see the numbers on that. And then off to the side, you can see the increase from like last year, lunches at 16,896, and this year at 20,000, that was in September, 20,963. So we are definitely busy. Breakfast has increased as well. Seeing, better behaviors with the kids, even at, breakfast and lunchtime, with that going on. And, so with the CEP adoption that we did, it was a guaranteed payment of our 90%. And we just actually received notification last week from ODE that, they are going to issue additional incentive CEP reimbursements, which will now get us 100%. So we aren't even, the 10% is going to be made up on that too. So we just received our first letter of payment. I don't think we have the payment yet, but we got the letter of payment for September, so they're going to back pay, you know, the other 4 months that we're waiting on. So that's great news. So you can see that the program is definitely successful and it's better than what we had planned on. So we are doing very well on that part of it. We've been working on getting refunds issued. So because everything's free now, we still have quite a few families that have money still in their accounts, and we've been working on that. We've issued over $10,000 in refunds so far. And we've been doing those at we did them during registration and at conferences, and now we're gonna start calling parents of seniors to try to get them before they head out in June. I'm sure they have lots of fees and things they need to pay. So we're trying to get that money out to them, and then we're also still collecting on negative balances at the same time. So that's the participation side of it. Any questions on that?
Anyone, questions? Merle?
Are the refund monies segregated and you know how much they are that are due to be refunded?
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And we're currently issuing cash refunds only. Just because there's so many of them, it would be a nightmare to do checks and then have all the uncashed checks and things like that. So we are doing cash refunds, which is kind of exciting for some of the families, except you have to come to pick them up.
Sure. Any other questions?
Are there many families that are opting to just donate that?
There are, we've received quite a few for the donations part of it, and those will then go to pay off the negative balances as well. So it's kind of, it's only transferred within those two areas.
This is kind of a budgeting question, but so. When you get reimbursed, you're talking, is what we're getting paid for is just the meal, the actual food cost, and then whatever. Maybe it doesn't include personnel. We're not able to pay personnel out of that amount.
For food services, we are only food services.
But you do pay for the food services personnel from that?
We pay our entire department based on that. So it's
Like a freestanding department then?
correct. We're like our own
Financially.
separate, financially, we're our own separate little entity. And so the reimbursement rate is established on the federal chart, and then it's announced. And so we are being paid 100% free meals. So the highest being paid is what we are. So a free meal is reimbursed at $4.54 per meal, where a paid meal was being reimbursed at 44 cents. So it's a huge difference of what we're receiving. And not accumulating any more negative debt.
I don't know if it works like this. Is that a state or federal?
It is. Okay, so it's both. So we have the federal part. So the CEP is a federal program. Initially, it was, you had to make a percentage to meet the requirements for CEP. And then last year, they lowered that threshold and said, if you can meet 60% of that, then the state of Oregon said, we'll meet 30% of it. So we'll get you to 90%, and then 10% would be at a paid rate. Now this year, or just last week, we got notice. So we were being met at 90% free. And then just last week, we got the notification for the additional 10% will be paid. So now it's at 100%.
But to be clear, just to be clear, every student in the district is received free.
Absolutely.
It's not regardless of
There's no we're not even taking applications.
income or
No-
nothing's
nothing,
counted. Okay,
nothing.
Thank you. That's-
Any other questions?
I'm trying to absorb it all.
So the other thing on the agenda for Lori was a change in the reimbursable meals and milk program AR. So this is an administrative rule, so it doesn't require board approval, but I think there may have been some questions from board members, but we did highlight the one addition, which is what Lori just got done talking about, just to kind of call that attention to the change in the AR. So I don't know if Lori, if there's anything in this policy you additionally wanted to highlight, or if there was any questions that the board might have.
Everything's still the same. The only item was number 6, which is highlighted that we're claiming alternative community eligibility, which is the CEP program. And everything stays the same, like the application procedures and everything is on there in the case or the event that the program is stopped, or we have to convert back to free and reduced meals, then we would still have that process in place, but that's still on there.
I know we're in for like 3 years, we're on.
4 years. This,
4
yeah,
years?
this is our first year.
Is the CEP, is the federal program also for those 4, or is it an annual thing?
It's an annual renewal, but we're approved for 4 years
Okay.
unless if something happens with state funding that they can't match
Sure.
what they've designated for that.
Okay.
But that's what we're signed up for.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? No?
I just want to thank Lori and her team for, I think we've all probably in our educational experience, food service staff that, with a smiling face when we were kids. And I just appreciate how hard her and her team work to support the kids that are in our schools now. So I definitely, you can walk into any one of our kitchens and see people busily getting ready for kids. So I really appreciate her team and all their hard work.
And I personally, and probably most people I know on the board would echo that we really appreciate all the love and energy that goes into feeding all of our kids.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, not yet.
So the first thing I am coming to talk to you guys about is that we have made an executive decision to postpone the adoption process for health materials. I'd come to you guys in October and we had made the official announcement that we were going to go through the process. Though we did at that time let you know that we weren't planning on making any purchase because of knowing that the budget was going to be where it was going to be. Dan and I had a lot of discussion and really it started with like looking at our spring and it was like, yeah, we can totally have 14 parent meetings this week. We can do it. And it felt like it was going to be doable. But the more we looked at things like we have to rewrite the integrated plan and that requires a lot of parent input, our need to go to the parents to share our youth truth data, and then finally the strategic plan and the need for parent input with that. It felt like also asking them to come and give input on health curriculum was just going to be one thing too many. And we felt it was really important that those community meetings be something that had its own kind of platform, because we want to be able to share about the community, the standards, and help our families understand what is actually taught, as well as have an opportunity to look at those materials. We'd already kind of started the process with some things. We had ordered some materials to look at. We're just going to put pause on all of that, keep the materials, set them aside, and start again in the fall. And we feel like that will give us more time to actually get in front of families and really get the meaningful feedback that we need. So we appreciate your guys' consideration with that, and we'll be officially announcing it on the website tomorrow and letting publishers know that we're putting a pause on things.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And then the other piece that I'm here to talk about is kind of connected. So as I said, we are needing to go back before ODE to provide them an updated integrated plan. And if you guys remember, I think it was my first year here, so that Linda and Dan, or not Dan, Bill and I and Ginger worked really hard on getting our integrated plan written. And so I guess it's been a couple years now and they want us to do it again. And gave us a whole new 170-page manual to look at to figure it out. So we're in the process of that rewriting. And I'll be honest, the thing that will make that rewriting go really easily this year is that it's so integrated with the work that we're doing for the strategic plan once, but honestly, the work we've been doing with the goals. So what we need to present to you guys today to officially meet our timeline for the integrated plan is our needs assessment. And what we've done with the needs assessment and what we have to do to ODE is say, here's all the data that we've reviewed. And Lindy, can you go down to the bottom and just click that last, yep, there's the link. So a lot of this data is the exact data that we've been sharing with you for the last few months, or is kind of a combination of the data we've been sharing with you. Sometimes we give the big overarching, but all of this is informing it. So things like our state testing data, our school-based assessments, like our STAR literacy or HMH growth. We have school-based data, like we've been looking at master schedules. We look at course enrollment, how students are participating in activities, our high school on track, our 9th grade on track, our attendance that's going across the district, behavior data, so looking for trends and patterns there. We've been doing community feedback, so youth truth surveys, student empathy interviews, community focus groups, listening sessions, surveys where we've actually called up families to encourage participation on surveys. And then district related data where we kind of take a higher look at things, including our notes with different community involvement sessions or different committees we've had, CTE advisory notes, our Division 22 work, our professional development calendar, et cetera. So we've just been using a lot of the information, and through that came up with a set of needs. And this is going to be really where we focus our integrated plan. And in some ways, this doesn't look a lot different than where we were last time with our integrated plan. And if you guys remember, and some of you are new, so the integrated plan might be new information, but the integrated plan was the state's attempt to try to make it so we only had some paperwork to do. We still have all the same paperwork to do, but they basically weaved all these different grants and funding streams into one document. So we say, these are the things we're working on. So what we did was identify some of the core areas that we will be using that funding for, or those different streams of funding. So the first is just really instructional excellence and curriculum alignment. So looking at high yield practices, improving student access to core content, adopting evidence-based materials, expanding opportunities for students to take CTE courses or college prep courses, et cetera. We have a goal this year. This is a new goal for us about being more data-driven in our decision-making and becoming more assessment literate and data literate. So some key changes there. Targeted support for our English language learners. That's always been a key piece, but we actually pulled it out and made it pretty distinctive in this year's document. Making sure that we are offering good instructional strategies, having the right training in place so our teachers can support our English learners, and making sure that kids have equitable access to materials. We're going to increase our professional development and support for teachers through those different systems. So making sure if we have something that's going into place, we're backing it up through support and training. And that was really part of our negotiations process, as teachers really wanted to make sure that they are trained on the systems that we're trying to implement. Family and community engagement, making sure that we're holding opportunities for building stronger partnerships and improving our communication with our families. And then student-centered systems like tutoring opportunities, multi-tiered systems of support, access to mental health and emotional learning opportunities, and summer and after-school programs. So though obviously these lists will continue to grow as we work through the budget process, but I believe that the needs that we identified firmly outline and align with the goals that we've been working on and the academic improvements we're looking to continue to show you guys. So with this, we will have this up on our website. I will work on also having it translated, and there'll be a survey that families can take to give us feedback. We want it up for about a month, and then we'll report to ODE that we presented it to the board and had opportunity for community feedback on our needs assessment.
All right, we'll just go around the room.
Yeah.
Glenn,
I'm good, thanks.
Heidi,
No, thank you.
Merle?
Is the guidance manual available to review?
Yeah, if you wanna read it for me, that would be great.
Not very fast.
Right, I can, I'll give it to Dan, it's a PDF that you can download.
Jenny?
Yeah, I'm weird, I'd be interested in that
Cool,
too,
yeah.
but yeah, no other questions, thank you.
I'll take your clip notes.
Do
Okay, moving on, sorry, Dan.
You're good?
you want me to go?
See here real quick. I think you're good to go. Yes,
Yeah.
you're good to go.
Okay.
All right, so the next thing on the superintendent report is the superintendent evaluation, and so I'm actually going to turn it over to Crystal to explain the process, because I'll learn right alongside with you. So take it away.
Okay, so in the past, we've used the OSBA format for our superintendent evaluation. And I would say technically Dan isn't due for an evaluation as he hasn't been here a full year. But just to keep us to follow our policies and procedures, Dan agreed to go ahead and go through that. So we will use the same format, the OSBA format. It will be a tiny bit different because I'll be sending out a form that matches some of our conversation that we had from community input, when we did our hiring. So it'll have additional touch points there. So when we did our hiring of the superintendent, we had asked for community feedback, staff feedback, and those pieces, and we had identified some key areas that we wanted to see displayed. And so that information will be integrated in there, which is why you'll see like a Microsoft form or Google form and not the exact OSBA form. You can compare those side by side, and I will send both out together, so you'll be able to see those. Then Dan will give his presentation regarding his self-evaluation at the work session in February. End of February. I'll be online. I'll be on Zoom that day, so Jenny will be leading that meeting. And then we will have a brief executive session that will either be at the March board meeting or the March work session if we need it. To have a discussion about that, that's legally allowed. Just for new people, we can legally meet for that purpose. And then we'll come out and we'll have a brief conversation and open public meeting regarding it. Sounds good?
Sounds good. Look forward to.
Any
feedback.
questions? So just to be clear, each of you will be emailed this form from me, and the form is a one-way form of communication. So that there's no collaboration outside of public meeting law. So you'll be submitting your information, I'll put it all together, and it'll be a discussion, an executive session.
What kind of timeline are you looking at? Like a,
I would say, once his information is given, then I'll have it I'll email it probably within the next 3 or 4 days after, and then give you guys like 2 weeks, is that enough, or a
Yeah,
week and a
that's
half? You good? Weekend homework, but it's not the Super Bowl, so. Okay, any other questions? Good? All right.
Everybody's.
So, so if you're aware, Linda and I have been, this week, we did 2 of 4 presentations. So this morning we were here at the middle school and afternoon at the intermediate school. We'll be at the high school and primary school on Thursday. So the presentation that you're gonna see is exactly what we've been presenting to staff. And I would like to, thank the comments that UNME made earlier today. We are doing our best to be as transparent and as sharing as information as soon as we possibly can. In the 2 meetings we had today, I think, the questions are not easy questions to answer, but I also want to compliment our staff for their professionalism and their kindness towards us, knowing that we're delivering tough information and hopefully our presentation today can also respond to some of public comment questions that were posed. And so we'll try to cover those as well. So this is the agenda that we present to staff, and then I typically hand it over to Linda to walk through most of it, and then we collectively try to answer questions at the end.
Okay. So how did we get here is the first part of it. So we have, oh, sorry, no, it's not, budget short. Our governor's budget is 11.36 billion for the biennium, as I've told you guys before. That has not changed, and it looks like it will not change. They may give us money in another way, but they don't believe, what we're hearing is that the state school fund is going to stay at the 11.36, which means we are 2.8 million short for next year. We believe this is going to be an issue for multiple years. We don't think that this is going away. We could receive some additional funding, but it would come in a different form, maybe some relief on our PERS rates that went up by quite a bit. Another 1.3 million for next fiscal year, or it could be in the form of increased money coming in for our special education students costs. Nothing has been set, and so we don't have those numbers. So we're going to build a budget on the $2.8 million shortfall, and if we get more, then we'll add back. I mean, that's the plan at this time, because we have to get going on this. The first Monday in March is when we get our first state school fund number. That will be key for me, because I've been using their estimator that had last year's carve outs. So they have to update the carve outs, which could change that number. So maybe we'll be in better shape or worse shape. And I won't know that until we get that estimate from that first Monday in March. And as we mentioned, about for every 100 million that they add, should be about 138,000 for North Marion. But again, this was all based on the carve outs from last year, and that could change also. So keep that in mind. So how did we get here? Mostly declining enrollment. We've lost over 400 students since 2015-16, and that is at about over $11,000 per student. Do the math over all those years. We were getting maybe 9,000 back then, a little under that. But as time goes on, it's more and more and more. The next biggest increase is the PERS increase of approximately 1.3 million, as I mentioned before, that from this year to next year. This increase could hold for several years, unless the legislature does something. I'm not real hopeful at what the legislature may do right now, because it almost always is challenged in litigation, and it can get stuck for 2 or 3 years. So they may give you a break, but then you might have to pay it back. So I'm not real hopeful. Sure, we'll take it if we get it, but let's see where they go with this. So that's a piece of it. And then larger COLAs have been given with negotiation settlements to be regionally competitive. But when you put that with our number of staff and our decreasing enrollment, we're not sustainable, as I've told you before. And as we're talking to the staff at the meetings, telling them the same things. So the next page is our potential reductions, and I gave you a handout with them. Not everything on those lists will be a cut, but those are the things we're looking at, pretty much everything. Where can we make a cut, and what can we do to save money now and into the next year or two? We're looking to reduce anything for this year, next year, years to come. We're working with the department and building administrators, reviewing everything we can, asking lots of questions. They're asking a lot. We're trying to answer a lot. We've gathered our staff and enrollment information. We've gathered what we predict, what our class sizes are now, and looking to project them to be bigger for next year, for sure. We're gathering participation numbers for clubs and athletics. We almost have all of that. We should have the rest of it tomorrow, so we can look at those. Resignations and retirements are coming in. We got a couple more in the last. I am officially resigning June 30th. You got my letter, so but I'm probably not
much of the savings because they probably have to replace me, so. We are encouraging staff at the meetings, if they plan on retiring or resigning, to let us know sooner rather than later, because that'll help save another person. We're working with the unions to negotiate reductions. Some were mentioned in the public comments, the tuition reimbursement, personal days and furlough days. And if those are considered, that would be for all groups, everyone, the district-wide. It would not be just one union or another. It would be district-wide, and we would want to get agreement with all unions and all groups for those. Same thing if we do a COLA reduction, and there are some newly negotiated items that we are talking with the union about, maybe not implementing them in the next fiscal year. The next one is the spreadsheet you guys have seen before, but I just want to mention that the columns in blue and well, on this screen, I really don't know what color that is. We're not even looking at those. We're just sticking with the first column, the 11.36 governor's budget, and the 2.8 that were short. This is an interactive screen, and these numbers in the middle white column are not for sure. They're just to give you an idea of what we need to cut to balance. And as you can see with the numbers that are up there, we're still short $154,000. We are hopeful that we have some savings this year with, we're cutting off POs soon, and hope that we can get, maybe even get that 154, maybe even 200,000, so that the deficit is not quite as large. So our timeline and our target dates. As we said, we're having staff meetings. We had 2 today and 2 will be on Thursday. We're finalizing our staff seniority list. All staff have been notified as to what we believe their start date is, and they're confirming that as yes or no. We're licensed, it's their licensure also that they're confirming. And then also for licensed staff, whether or not they're bilingual in Spanish and can read, write, and speak in Spanish. We would like to get those lists finalized and sent to the unions by February 24th, so that then we can possibly have the staff finalized that will be retained by March 7th. We are looking at doing this in phases. So this would be phase 1. We are believing this would be our worst case scenario. So we may let you know that you are not placed for next year, but hopefully with some of the information we get from the state or money back, or maybe the furlough days, if we get those 2 for this year, would save 2 licensed staff or 3 or 4 classified staff, or that kind of a thing. Whatever we can save now will help us. All of these numbers keep moving because that's what it is. It's just, we don't know what people are for sure going to spend. We are cutting off purchase orders March 21st, and I shouldn't say just purchase orders, all purchasing, unless it's grant funded, and then they can keep spending because some of those need to be spent out. And student body funds, there'll be some exceptions. Graduation is coming up. Some people need to purchase live things for their classes, like in 3rd trimester. So there'll be some exceptions, but for the most part, we've encouraged everyone to spend now and be done. Turn in your receipts or mileage reimbursements if you have any, get them going so that I can project what our ending fund balance might be, because that helps us for the next year. So, and the ongoing timeline is just keep talking with the unions and the departments, and building budget work is still going on. So questions, thoughts?
So I know I've let the board know that I want to have a discussion regarding furlough days, but I thought before I lead through that discussion, do you have any questions from what Linda presented to you?
I think, we're just gonna go around the table.
Okay, that's fine.
Robert? Okay. Kelsey?
I don't have any.
Glenn?
I don't have any, but I might come back.
Yeah.
Okay. Heidi?
Yeah, so.
Merle?
Am I reading that correctly? You're projecting budget expenses with 7 furlough days?
Those are not set in stone. Those are just giving you an idea of what it's going to
What it
take.
would
to save 2.8
credit
million
back
dollars.
to us if we
Yeah.
happen to have
Yeah.
snow that many times.
Well, and that number 7 is talking about next year, and so.
Okay.
So that sheet is really looking at a next year, for next year's budget reduction. The furlough conversation is kind of a 2-part, and we're really focusing on this year when we get to that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is just kind of a projection of.
Yeah.
Yep.
Estimate.
Yeah, if you were to open it up, you can interact and you can say, what if we cut all the administrators? Well, you know, then we only need to cut this or that or whatever. You can play with
That's what
this.
would happen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jen?
I was looking through this and doing looking online and using some AI for ideas, and I know OSBA is Centralized Purchasing Consortium. Are we participating in that?
OSBA centralized.
Yeah,
purchasing.
centralized purchase, like to help reduce.
Salem Kaiser has that. They're part of that. Big one. We go through Willamette ESD for our printing and things like that. We do that whenever we can. Yeah. Office Depot beats most people.
Yeah.
We get better pricing than what you see when you go in Office Depot.
Mhm.
Anything else?
I would just like to comment that, it's gonna be a tough role. And my heart has been in prayer most of the weekend on this. But we have to be financially responsible so that we can keep our schools open. And my heart really does go out to all of the people who will be affected. But I also have a responsibility to the taxpayers and the voters and the students. And so I have to keep all of those pieces of the pie together. So just know that we are not taking this lightly. We're deeply in prayer. All of us are studying behind the scenes. And we have to balance our budget. So Dan?
Okay. So, one last thing before we actually, I think I've got 2 things now in my head before we talk about furloughs. I do want to stress just for the public that on the spreadsheet, they're about halfway through the list of budget reduction items. They're the change in color. I want to just emphasize for everybody that those have to be negotiated with our associations. We cannot unilaterally do those things without partnership or agreement with either association. I just wanted to put that out there, and that's why having the ongoing relationships and conversations with both associations is critical. The next thing I wanted to say is that later on the agenda is I'm asking you to authorize the superintendent to authorize me to conduct a reduction in force. And that is, like Crystal mentioned, is not something that anyone takes lightly. And is very difficult for everybody. And so, but I think that it is important that the board act on that and participate as leaders and within this district. Because we do have, as Crystal talked about, and as we've presented to you, we do have a significant budget issue that we need to resolve. And I wanted to preface with that because, you know, one of the things that we can do right now is to enter into an agreement with our associations regarding furloughing 2 days this school year, which would be about $175,000.
Or a little less, but yeah, 170-ish.
Yeah. You know, that's 2 teachers, that's 3 classified staff members. That is a decision that can help save those positions for next year. And that is why, you know, it's my recommendation that we do that if that opportunity presents itself. And both associations have shown a willingness to do that. The current talk is to be 1 day, probably the Friday before the Memorial Day weekend, and then both associations have indicated an agreement to not get the Memorial Day paid holiday, which I think speaks volumes of both of our associations to be willingness to do that. And so though, that's been the discussion. We've also proposed that if we had an inclement weather day or some form of closure, especially in the upcoming weeks, both associations have indicated their willingness to call that the furlough days, whether that's 1 or up to 2 days, which again, I think speaks to their willingness to partner with us in achieving these reductions. And I'm bringing it for the board for a discussion to hear from you, because if we you would have to approve a calendar adjustment. So if we were to close school on the Friday before Memorial Day, it would take your approval of a calendar adjustment. So I need to know where the board is at. Because the last thing I would want to do is bring back a calendar adjustment that did not pass. So I need to hear from the board where you're at in terms of us negotiating 2 furlough days, one of which would be a school closure day. At this point, I would venture a guess it'd be the Friday before Memorial Day unless we had inclement weather.
Glenn, we'll start with you.
Probably my concern would be furlough days or seem like a bit of a Band-Aid to a larger problem, which is we don't have the number of students that we used to. So is there still a strategy in place to return us to a position of a staff to student ratio that is more in line with what we saw when our, honestly, when our student population was more robust?
Absolutely. We are looking at our class sizes, and those questions came up at the intermediate school today, and conversations of getting our staff to student ratio back to where it was during those years that we had more students. And I don't disagree that furlough days are more of a temporary nature. Doing it on this side allows the district to take that 2.8 and make it something less for next year. It would not be the top of our list of things to do next year.
Heidi?
I'm just thinking about previous years when we faced similar situations during economic downturns. And when we looked at tiered approaches such as this and how to approach, what kind of how to make cuts, looking at what we're looking at now. And we didn't do furlough days, and we really tried not to do that. Looking back, and I think we did some other things instead. Looking back, I think that was a mistake. Other school districts did do day cuts or cut some days. Yeah, and I believe that was an error that we made, and I would, you don't know, you do what you can, but hindsight. And so I do support furlough days, because what ends up happening is if we continue to ask staff to take a reduction in COLA or to take other reductions, which I know help, we get behind. And this is kind of how we have gotten behind in the past of being able to be competitive. So I would rather have a furlough day. If with the unions on board with that.
Chelsea?
Yeah, I support the furlough days too. I was curious how you came up on 2. Like, is that?
To say 2 licensed or 3 classified for next year, but basically you spread it out over as many paychecks as that are left. If we can get this, say we get this done before the March paycheck, which is our goal, then most staff will have 6 paychecks, March, April, May, and 3 in June. So the hit per paycheck is not as hard. So that would be why we would try to do that. For someone like most of our administrators in confidential, that's not the case. We get 1 check a month. Usually some administrators get 2 in June, but still we're trying to spread that out as far as we can. And we think that 2 is a good ask and not going too deep this year.
Yeah, I think credit to Linda for, we're not making a reduction because this budget has a problem. We're really looking forward and doing these 2 now like she said, 2 licensed positions, 3 classified. I think that, and also not taking too big of a hit into everybody's pocketbook this year.
So, I don't know how their paychecks work, but the 2 suggested days in May, on Memorial Weekend, would that be better to separate the days? Like, so
No,
they aren't.
because if we know March first, we just spread it out. We just say, instead of working 185 days, you're working 183, and the system will automatically recalculate their pay per month. And the same thing with, if you're a 192-day employee, the same idea. If, once you tell it, this is your new calendar, and these are the days, this is a non-paid and this is a non-paid, it calculates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so just because they're both in May won't mean that it hits hard in May.
I got you. Okay. Okay.
Robert?
No, that helped me out with just hearing that.
Merle?
Hard questions. As much as I'm not in favor of reducing instructional hours, but I'm supportive of the plan, and it sounds like we're getting good cooperation across the board. And it's purely speculation on my part, but Memorial Day are probably not the most productive instructional hours anyway. I can support.
There's a fair number of families that come to the office to pick up their kid to head out for the weekend, so, yeah.
Jenny?
Yeah, I agree with Merle. My preference would not to be having furlough days on student contact days. We need our kids in school, so they're learning. My preference would obviously be for, inclement weather days. That said, it sounds like the board is in support of that plan, and I would stand with the board and the teachers and your recommendations.
And I just echo what Jenny also says, I do not support student contact days. That was really something that has bothered me for a while, is giving up student contact days when we're so adamant to get our children into the chair. So, but hearing the rest of my board be in support of that furlough, I would also be in support, but I hope we have a snow day.
Then your student is not in the chair anyway. So I don't think anything from that, Crystal.
But I will be agreeing to it. That'll be it.
Well, we still need an agreement though, but yeah, a different kind of agreement, so. Well, I appreciate that this really does help us, and I appreciate you giving us this feedback.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did you decide on the 2 days in March?
In May.
Or May, sorry, and like, can you look back and like see days where less kids are in school on like certain weekends or holiday weekends or in the school year?
I didn't look back, but as Dan said, anytime you have a holiday that Friday before, it's a little leaner with students. So I think your principals would echo that.
Yeah, kind of along the same lines of that, we're looking like end of the school year, there's a lot of like Mickey days or clean out your locker and your desk days, so I mean, that might be.
We've thought about that. I think sometimes when you do that, I think it also can stress staff out to try to compress all the things they need to do, and some of those end of the year activities that kids have and whatnot. I think it could be a little harder. I realize maybe the quality of instruction or, of what's happening in the classroom after, you turn in your books, like, what are you doing? But
Yeah.
I do understand that, but I do think that it does make it harder on the staff to try to close up shop and still have meaningful, fun experiences for kids wrapping up the year.
And I also heard from some union members that they were appreciative that we thought of making a 4-day weekend. If you're gonna do this, then thank you. Give us a 4-day weekend. So that they were appreciative of that.
I would 100% echo that.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. I think mostly.
Am I staying here? I'll just stay. Okay.
Back and forth.
I'll just stay. So the local service, so the items up on for board action is the local service plan, which just gives you a list of the things that we could contract with the Willamette ESD. That list does not mean we purchase all of those. It just has the services that we could purchase and how we go about doing that with WSD. So I don't know if we wanna, how you want to,
I think we'll do them separate.
so
Okay.
do you wanna go ahead and vote
Yeah.
on that one? Okay.
Yeah, so if the board has had a chance to review that, and I would entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the local service plan for 2025-2027 from Willamette ESD.
Do I hear a second?
I'll do a second.
Having a first and second, any discussion?
What are we looking at here?
Willamette ESD under board action, it's item number A. And this is kind of an annual, in my perspective, I've seen this since I've been on the board, where we can have the opportunity to contract services that we may need supported. And it's from the Willamette ESD. We can cherry pick. Any other questions or comments?
So these are services that if we need support, we can reach out to them and they will help us.
For a fee.
Yeah, so some of these are annual things that we will always need and we will always continue to purchase. And there are some that, you know, they try new services. And so we say, oh yeah, we might be able to, we might have a need for that. But I mean, we are definitely looking at, we'll go to that process here in a few weeks or a month. But we'll definitely be reducing some of those services. But this just gives you the overview of what all we could purchase through them.
And there's not a guaranteed spending limit that I know of.
Say that again.
Do we have a minimum that we have to spend or spend?
There's a pot of money allocated to every school district and we always spend it all and then some, but we don't have to.
Okay. Anything else?
By approving this, we're not guaranteed, we're purchasing all these things, administration will decide.
Correct.
Some, but not all.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds fine.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, so we're about to be all caught up on policy adoption again, and so I think we've got a good system going here. The only things I would like to highlight and make sure is that we did make some adjustments to the graduation requirements. Both Cheryl Dyer added some language regarding extended diploma. We also heard back from board members regarding wanting to make sure that we continue to have 25 credits to graduate. And so we added some language in there to make sure people understood, because the policy indicates that you're supposed to list, well, if you're above the state, then what is it? And so we are redirecting folks. I'm not sure if we need.
Open or?
Sure.
We'll try.
We keep scrolling down. So right there, you notice that I put, so I scrolled around I looked at a bunch of different districts because I knew we weren't the only one that were going above the state. And, you know, how do other districts write this into their policy? And Canby was the one I liked the best, where they redirected their folks to their high school. You know, where can you find out from the high school? And so this link takes folks to our high school counselor forecasting page, where people can go and say, what does it take to get a North Marion high school diploma? So I think that this allows it to be fluid and flexible, and does outline that we require 25 credits to graduate. And then I also want to make sure that I signified that an Oregon State diploma, these are the requirements for a diploma in the state of Oregon. So I just kind of made a slight change in that wording there. So that was the only updates from our work session, first reading to today. And I just also want to make sure that our KLAR, even though the board doesn't approve or vote on ARs, is that you've seen the changes to the complaint procedure and that there are not any questions. Just made some slight adjustments, in my opinion. Okay.
All right, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll move we approve IKF as presented.
I think we're approving,
I'm sorry.
adopting.
Right, for adopting everything. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I have. I'll move that we have approved the policies. For adoption, is that correct? As
Yes.
presented,
Yes.
second reading and adoption.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
I'll let you handle the third item, the appointment of budget committee members. Is there currently, we have no applicants?
Right, so because we have no applicants for the budget committee members, I'm challenging each school board member to phone 2 friends and ask them to apply. Not bribery, but I know that you can make it happen.
So how many positions do you have open and how many do we need?
I believe 3, but 3, I think. 4? 3 for sure.
We could have as many as 7, couldn't we? I mean, we have some now.
Yes.
I don't know how many, 3 or 4 now?
We have 3 or 4 now, we can have up to 7, so we need.
I need at least 3.
How many do you have to have by law? None?
I don't know that you have to have any.
Up to 10, okay.
It's good. Yeah.
And I would add to that, to gently remind them that we actually are reviewing a budget deficit that will be involved, and so it's more critical now to have budget members than ever before.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is an ownership type of a piece. This is your opportunity to speak. So, make some phone calls. Do you want to chime in, Heidi? Heidi?
It just seems like, you know, we should have somebody on the board who like officially handles like, I want Facebook with parents and post that kind of stuff,
I can post it on Facebook.
yeah.
I'll cross post it across. Right. Okay, but still, I think that personal phone call makes a huge difference. Because then they can ask questions that they wouldn't want to necessarily ask in like a public piece. All right, back to you, Dan.
All right, so as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm requesting that you vote to authorize me to conduct a reduction in force as part of the reduction process for the 25-26 school year.
But what does that mean?
Well, so, you know, this is not required by policy, nor is it required by our CBA. But I do think it's important that the board take action to authorize me to do this, because we have minimal ways that we can balance a budget. So as was discussed earlier, we have negotiated agreements with our associations, and we need to honor those agreements unless we mutually can agree on some other changes. But the one thing that we can do is reduce our expenditures by reducing staff. And there's processes outlined in both contracts that say, when you need to reduce staff, you conduct what's called a reduction in force, and then you reduce the number of staff members you hire. or you have employed. And so it is a very weighty decision, but one, it's really the main mechanism the district can utilize when it's facing budget cuts that we are facing.
Dan, can you remind me how much of our budget is, or maybe Linda, how much of our budget is personnel costs and personnel?
Probably about 85% of it. Most districts fluctuate between 80 and 90, depending on what other projects they might be working on. We're probably right at the 85%.
Are you gonna go around or?
Yeah. Yep. Heidi, you want to get us started?
Okay. So, this is not, I'm kind of wondering, how do you see the board's involvement in that? Or in communicating with you or supporting you or?
Good question. I don't see the board actively participating in the process. Other than I tried to outline to you, at least in the license side and the communications that I've had with staff and the process designed to make sure it is as clear as it possibly can be. And I think one of the main things in terms of doing phases is if we know that we're making reductions, we owe it to the people that may be laid off to let them know as soon as possible so that they can be out and looking for a job right now. So I think what I'm asking for is essentially your authorization acknowledges that this is an unfortunate but necessary step that the district has to make. I'm not asking for your direct involvement in the process, just asking you to acknowledge that this is a very weighty decision, but one that has to happen.
You good, Heidi?
Um,
You want me to come back around?
yeah,
Glenn?
I would just say that I see this as good governance. It's, you're asking to go through a difficult process. There's always sort of this groundswell that the board needs to be informed. You've done that a lot. You've kept us very much apprised of the process you've looked at, what you're going to do, how you're gonna make that, so, not that you need cover from the board. But this is sort of an agreement that, yes, we agree with what you're doing. You're not out there, acting unilaterally without the board fully knowing what needs to happen in order to make sure that the district is in a viable financial position, not just this year, but in years to come.
Kelsey?
Yeah, I agree. It's really unfortunate, but I think it's, I think it's necessary.
Robert?
No, that helped me out a little bit. Doesn't think thing.
Jenny?
Yeah, I agree with what Glenn said. It's good governance, it's transparency, and I appreciate, as it's been said many times tonight, appreciate the communication and the forthrightness. Yeah, I'm sorry that our district has to go through this. It sucks, but we have to balance our budget. We have to be responsible.
Merle?
Yeah, much as I don't like change, I think you're doing the best that can be done, and it's our duty to stand with you, and I will.
Heidi?
I echo everything that's been said. I would just, I'm very appreciative of the type of transparency and communication that we've been receiving. I would just ask that to continue. You gave us kind of an example of where cuts might appear to be in a balanced way. And it's not a trust issue. I guess I've just been on the board too long, so I'm just saying. If that were to vary, like you decide to go crazy and, do some stuff that we're not aware of and cut a huge amount in one area and not, I guess what I'm saying is just if you could just make sure that we're kept up to date so that we're not.
You do not want to be blindsided with a program reduction that is going to
Yeah.
cause you to get emails
Yeah.
and a
or just-
large turnout at a board meeting, yes.
or That can, yeah.
Yeah.
Or that we might, have, really disagree with.
Yeah, no, I hear that, and I think that, the timeline that Linda and I presented, we're trying to make sure. I mean, this is a process that even though we're doing this in phases, you can't really mess up. And so, having the accuracy of information to make sure that all of the basis of our decision, so we emailed licensed staff today that they will be getting an email that is going to tell them what's going to be on the seniority list as to make sure that information is accurate, because that information is where we're going to base decisions. Once we get that list populated and sent to the unions, we will be in a better situation. Plus, we're still gathering information from our principals as far, especially at the secondary level, because their schedules are tougher to build and they still haven't forecasted yet, to be able to kind of know what those things are. So I hear what you're saying in terms of when we see where we might be able to make reductions, that I'm keeping you informed.
So I just say that again, this is just the necessary evil of budgeting. And I am really sorry. I mean, I've experienced having a spouse lose their job. And the reality is it's gonna be really tough. And so the more notice that we can give those people, the better. And I'd just like to thank Dan, especially for his transparency, clear communication, consistent communication. It's not easy being the person there giving out the bad news. Linda, for her constant, just tedious math skills, to be like checking those numbers every single day and seeing where adjustments can be made. But then especially to all of our staff, North Marion is really privileged to have just a family community. And I just want you to know that we really do care about you and keeping our students at the center of our decision-making so that there are opportunities, because that's why we're really here. So thank you so much, and I'll definitely be praying for everyone. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to authorize the superintendent to conduct a reduction in force as part of the budget reduction process for 2025-2026 school year.
I'll second.
Hearing a first and a second. Do I hear any other discussion needed? We'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution carries. Our next item of business is we will adjourn into executive session, but do we want to take a 10-minute break? Or 5, or right in? What do you think of 5?
So we are gonna be moving into my office, so we'll take at least 5, let's, be there in 5 minutes. I do think you do need to read the ORS before we adjourn.
Okay. The board will now meet in an executive session according to ORS 192.6602F to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection.
And probably to notify that we will be returning to open session.
And we will be returning to open session.
We'll be coming back here.
Yes. So we'll adjourn for a 5-minute break at 7:18 PM.